Hello everyone, I'm David Newsome. I'm the Joint Coordinator of Hands at Work in Africa here in the UK. The Bible reading for this week's midweek message is continuing our theme of Just Jesus, Just John, and it's from St. John's Gospel, chapter 6, verses 14 to 24. When the people saw the sign that Jesus had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is coming into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him a king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, got into a boat, and started across the lake to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The lake became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they'd rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the lake and coming near the boat, and they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I. Do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land towards which they were going. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the other side of the lake saw that there had been only one boat there. They also saw that Jesus had not got into the boat with his disciples, but that his disciples had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias came near the place where they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. So when the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they themselves got into the boats and went to Capernaum looking for Jesus. Hands at Work goes to the very poorest communities, and often the most isolated ones as well. Once we've identified such a community, we begin a period of what we call walking with that community. The period of walking is a time to get to know the community, to learn their stories, and to discover what they're already doing in terms of supporting orphaned and vulnerable children. It's a time of mapping the community and assessing the needs of the children. It's a patient time of listening and of home visits. We seek to identify what we call the Mother Teresa figure, a key person of goodwill who's already caring for children and those in need. We also seek someone we call the Man of Peace, a man or men of goodwill in the community, perhaps a pastor or someone of influence and resources who will be prepared to support the community in its vision. This walking time can be a period of months or even years. Patience is very important because Hands at Work doesn't impose its ideas or just pour money into a situation. Rather, we seek to enable and develop the potential that is already there. To the outsider, it can appear little is happening, and to the activist wanting a rapid fix, it can be deeply frustrating. But community ownership is achieved by this kind of patient walking. In the 1970s, a Japanese theologian wrote an essay about the nature of God that suggests that there's a deeper significance to this concept of walking a community. His essay is entitled 3 Mile an Hour God. In it, he reflects on the slow, patient way the story of salvation unfolds in the pages of the Bible. God does not rush us, he argues. God walks slowly, he says, because God is love. He patiently walks alongside at the speed that we walk, hence the 3-mile-an-hour God. This theme of God walking with us defines the relationship between God and humanity. It's central to the law in Leviticus. I will walk among you and will be your God, and you shall be my people. And it's core too to what he asks of us. The prophet Micah, for example, reminds us that we're called to walk humbly with our God. The incarnation of Jesus, his birth amongst us, fleshed out God's plan to walk with us. In the Gospels, we see Jesus walking from Galilee to Jerusalem. We see him walking with his disciples and talking with them as they go. He walked carrying his cross to Golgotha. He walked alongside the 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. And the passage we're considering today, Jesus walking on the water, appears in 3 of the 4 Gospels. It isn't included in St. Luke's Gospel. So what's distinctive about John's account, and what does it tell us about Jesus? If you compare it to the similar account in Matthew and Mark, there's a brevity, a briefness to John's account, which seems to me to emphasize 3 things. Firstly, in verse 17, John notes, it was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The scene for St. John is never incidental. The darkness speaks of a feeling of God's absence and of being forsaken. Secondly, these feelings are compounded further by the storm. The lake became rough because a strong wind was blowing. Thirdly, John's image of Jesus walking near them places God firmly in the storm, walking alongside us. So when Jesus then says, "It is I, do not be afraid," the assurance for John comes from God with us, even in the storm. So just as in Hands at Work we seek to walk with the community, so God promises to walk alongside us, even in the midst of the storm. The poet T.S. Eliot speaks of this accompanying presence in his poem The Wasteland. Who is the third who always walks beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together. But when I look ahead up the white road, there is always another one walking beside you. So too for John, Jesus walks alongside us in the storm, dispelling our lurking fears. Amen.